What's up guys, welcome back to the last new world. Today, I want to get started terraforming this area into a Hobbit village with a few more holes, farms, and some minor terraforming. Let's hop to our eye in the sky to see what plans we've got going on. So, as far as plans for our Hobbit village go, I have very few at the moment. I think that on this here main hill and on this hill next to it, we're going to do a bunch of little hobbit holes, kind of all around, little house fronts, maybe with some staircases kind of looping up and around to get to the peaks of the mountains and head between the hobbit holes so we can kind of have them staggered on different layers. I think that would be very interesting to the eye. And then, we'll have some paths going around to the river, spreading out, going everywhere between all these farmlands and everything. Speaking of farmlands, then we'll have some kind of larger fields here, I think. Something like this, very organic, very natural looking, all encompassed by a large wall. I think we're going to do that like this, and then to here, and then we may end up expanding it around the back here, doing a similar kind of thing. I think eventually this here village is going to have to say bye-bye, just for how we want this to look. But I do want to successfully transplant the villagers into here. I want to make these walls safe. I want to make everything within this spawn proof so that we can have free roaming villagers around. I think that would be very interesting. So yeah, today we're going to try to knock out a couple of hobbit holes and then maybe one or two farms. So let's get right back into it. So guys, I think now that we have a rough plan, the first step is going to be to kind of terraform this area out. Get it not necessarily flat, but fill in these holes, kind of smooth out the edges a little bit. I think I might even bust out this whole kind of ledge here. Either that or maybe I'll make it more rounded so we can shove a hobbit hole in it. I think that might be the better move, is that we kind of round this off, make it a little larger. So I'm going to hop right into that, and I'm going to test out the replay mod and see if we can get a time lapse going of me doing all that. All right, enjoy. Now that we've got a little bit of the terraforming in this area done, I think I'm going to go through with my trusty spade here and lay out a couple of the pathways that we want to be going on here. Just, run around, right click, make path blocks, kind of get a rough layout of what we want to do in this area. I'm not going to bother with over here yet because I really don't want to move all these farms quite yet. But eventually we will have a path kind of coming up here, a couple hobbit holes down there maybe, and then definitely like a few in this little indent. I think it would be really cool to have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 3 in this little alcove. I think that would look kind of cool. But yeah, I'm going to bring you along for a little bit of this, just so that you can kind of understand my method here. We want to look at the big picture when we're making paths. We want to think, where would people actually need to be traveling? And so if this is going to be our main hill, we're going to want to have a main path coming off of here. So let's start from a little bit off of the hill. Maybe we'd have a staircase kind of arcing up here. Maybe it does a swing back and it hits a couple of hobbit holes on the way up. But because of that, we're just going to kind of roughly lay out a path here. We're going to have it kind of go this way. And then maybe it would swoop back a little because they need it to go to the river. And it's going to go down this way. Hi, sheep. It gets a little annoying when there's tall grass making these paths. But again, this is just to get a layout. This is not anything permanent. This will get filled in. Like I said, we've got some of the terraforming done. Not quite done yet. So that's a good main path out between here and the river. And then off of this path, we'd have a couple smaller paths. So maybe we'd have a hobbit hole here. So there'd be a path that would have to go kind of like this. And then maybe we would have a field right in this little area, and we'd have a path that goes between a couple of fields, sort of like this way. So when you're thinking about your paths, and this is only one way to do this. Sometimes when I'm building, I'll lay out the fields first, the houses first, and then I will go through the paths. But I think right here and now, it makes the most sense to kind of get a general path layout going, and then come back and do the fields and everything. And I think we'd have a path that kind of goes back up this way. Because maybe we'd have a hobbit hole here that isn't on the main path, because that main path is going to obviously go to a main staircase that kind of swoops up. And yeah, so it's just kind of thinking about point A, point B, and how to connect them. And hiya! Oh, masterful. Can't hit me. Oh, look at that. So yeah, I'm going to get these paths done. I'm going to maybe lay out a couple more here. Just get the idea of what we're doing. And then I was actually inspired by this comment here that I'm going to put up on screen. I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a little crop field. And we're going to see if we can make it semi-automatic with a little bit of redstone while still keeping it aesthetic and pretty. I think it's going to be kind of a fun challenge. So we're going to get into that right after I finish these paths. Alright guys, so I laid out a couple more little offshoots of paths, kind of just so you get a general idea of what we want going on in this area, as well as I thickened up some of the ones around the area that we'll be working on, just so we get an idea of how large they're going to be. This is probably going to have to be thickened up a little bit more, because this will be very heavily trafficked. You know, you want the more heavily trafficked paths to be a little bit thicker. This is just temporary. This is just a layout. I think eventually we're going to go with probably gravel and stone for these paths, especially since we used mud for our hobbit hole. I don't really want to use mud for the paths as well, but I have been really liking mud paths recently in my building. So that's maybe going to be a hard habit to break. But I think that this little patch right here is what we're going to try to turn into our crop farm for the day. And I want it to look good and be sort of automatic-ish, semi-automatic. I'm not going to get villagers in to replant the seeds, but I want it to be able to automatically harvest. So we're going to try to figure out some redstone-y method of doing that, probably with dispensers and water, I would think. But first things first, I'm going to build up a fence or a wall. I haven't quite decided. I'm going to have to play around with that a little bit. I think probably just a wall. Like a cobblestone wall, maybe make it look a little bit ruined up around it to delineate it. So we're going to get that going first. Be right back. Alright guys, we have made a little bit of a wall, kind of delineated the area that this exists in. I went for a very cobblestone-y wall aesthetic and made it look like it's been patched with wooden fencing where it's degraded over time, and maybe this farmer didn't have the money to hire a mason to rebuild the wall. That's also why it looks like it's kind of crumpled and not quite pristine. But I think this gives us a good area to set up our crop farm in. I think the next step is we're going to actually take these buckets here and we're going to try to figure out at least what the minimum number of water sources we could have be dispensed that would completely harvest this area. So I think it goes out 7 blocks, which would be what, 3 diagonally? 1, 2, 3, like that? Does that reach all the way to the edge? That does. Okay. So that's a good start. 2, 3. Oh, not quite there though. Move it over 1. Does it still reach the edge there? Nope. This is a challenge. How about one there? Oh, so close. One there? Okay, so that does it. And then once we have this laid out, we're going to come through and we're going to break all those blocks that are under the sources. So we'll know where we need to put dispensers. Oh, it doesn't quite hit that though. Am I going to have to do something silly like that? Ridiculous. Okay. But that. Not quite. But that does. Okay. So what are we up to? 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too bad. We could limit it to 5. I'd be happy. I think 5 gets it. Yeah. It might not be the most efficient setup, but it'll harvest everything. So I think let's go through Let's do boop, boop. 3, 4, 5, and then we'll come back through with our buckets. And now that we know where this has to be, we know where we can set up our dispensers to harvest this field. And I'm trying to figure out what we need the most. Probably wheat. I think wheat makes the most sense, especially if we're going to be using packed mud in more of our builds. I think a wheat farm is the most useful early on. Since we're past the potato stage at this point, we're into the steak era. So let me craft up some dispensers and maybe try to get something rigged up here. I don't know how we'll make it look nice. Maybe just like a slab, like a wood slab that looks less contrasty against the farmland. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm gonna see if I can get some dispensers crafted up, and get a basic redstone circuit going. Yeah. I'm not great at redstone, but I'll try to get something figured out. I need a thing, and that thing is string. Dispensers take so much string. I need a thing, and that thing is string. Dispensers take so much string. So I got some very basic redstone set up, and I got the field planted. I think now it's just going to be a waiting game until all of that wheat grows and we can give it a proper test. There's a button hooked up right there that has redstone running to all of these, and once this grows up we should be able to test it out. So I'm just gonna AFK for a bit, and yeah, maybe I'll time-lapse the wheat growing. We'll see. I know not everything is fully grown, but I'm seeing enough yellow in there that I think I'm willing to do this. So actually, before we test it, I want to put slabs over top just to kind of hide the dispensers a little bit more. And I think this should still work. I think you can dispense into blocks. Like anything you can waterlog, I think will be fine. And I think it will flow. So let's give this a test real quick. Boom. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, so we might want to do something here to keep this from flowing out, but it's also... Oh, it is kind of the end of the world because the button... I guess we can just put the button on the top. Oh, no. And it didn't hit the last 2 dispensers. Okay, I wonder why. What do we have going on here? Seems to be the problem. Why did it not make it far enough? How? Got water buckets in them. Aw. Oh, and now I messed it up. Let me get a lever so that I can see what's actually going on here. Give me a second. Okay, I figured it out. It was, we moved a line of redstone so that we can have better access down there. And when I did that, it made it so that those 2 were out of range. So I added in a repeater. And now when we press this button, I know there's no crops. It's kind of sad. I was hoping that we'd have this really cool, like, oh, it all gets harvested and it's so cool. But I guess we're going to have to test the boring way. So let's see. Look at that. And it's all flooded. And then we can just press this again and it all goes away. And then we can run around and harvest. That's awesome. So it looks like that harvest got us almost 3 stacks. So I guess a full harvest would maybe get us 3.5, maybe 3. I couldn't quite tell how much was fully grown. But I'm going to get this replanted. And I think we're going to call this a success. I think we're going to move on to our next project, which I mentioned it last time, but we're going to make some friends. We're going to get some horses and we're going to build a stables. Just a little one, probably right here. Right next to this, I think works out. Or maybe, yeah, I think this area makes the most sense. So we're going to build a stables right here once I get this all replanted. So we've got a rough footprint laid out here for a little 3 stall stable. I was gonna make it bigger, but we don't really need that many horses, and we may end up building a larger stable somewhere since we're gonna kind of have spanning fields around here. And I figure that a small one right here is maybe a good place to start off, especially since we don't even have a horse to live in it yet. So I don't know what palette we want to use for this. I got some calcite from a geode. I was thinking maybe some calcite. Maybe we stick with mud like we've got up there. Maybe the mangrove wood. But I honestly have no idea. So I might just kind of experiment as we're building this and see what I come up with. I did some experimenting. And I'm trying to figure out if we've been experimenting too close to the sun here. Gonna have this building be diagonal, at least on the first floor where the actual stables are gonna be. And I think I've got it laid out in a way that it doesn't look weird. Let me break that down so we can see it better. I think this angle works out, especially because I want to have this be a field for the horses to kind of run around in. And I think that makes the most sense. It kind of gets to face it more. And it'll add some interest to the building. It's going to be 2 floors, which also maybe is a problem. Because most Hobbit buildings don't really have multiple floors as far as I'm aware. I think they're mostly 1-story structures. But, you know, we're not going off of Lord of the Rings lore. I was trying to get some inspiration by looking at some stills from the movies and some artists' work. There's not any Hobbit stables that I saw. So I'm kind of winging it here for the most part and kind of just taking in thematic elements from Hobbit buildings, like the rounded front door and, you know, the kind of low sloping roofs, right? Very similar to how Hobbit holes have it with the rounded door and the kind of arc. So I think it's looking pretty good. And I think we just need to kind of keep poking at it and, you know, get the second floor in. The back's going to be problem. It's always the back that's the problem when you're building in this way. When you don't start with a layout, it's always hard to figure out the best way to kind of connect the 2 sides. You know, the first 2 sides very easy. The third side is a little bit harder. Then the last side is always the hardest when you do it this way. But we're going to get back into it. I think I'm going to try to finish up the first 2 walls here and maybe get like the final tippy top roof on. And then we'll come back and we'll see where we're at. And as the sun goes down, we've got not quite all of it done. Or I should clarify, not quite all of the 2 walls that we said I was going to get done before coming back. But I think we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. And I think it's actually looking pretty good. I think I'm enjoying it. I like the white on the top. I like how many different colors of brown we are with the red to kind of contrast and throw it all together. I'm enjoying this. I'm thinking this build is going pretty well. I really like this big window I've put up in the front here. It gives it a very barn-like feel. But it's got its own character. It's more than just, you know, a standard old barn. I'm really liking this. I think the hardest part is upcoming, and that's what are we going to do for these last 2 walls? How are we going to tie this building in and complete it? Because we've got stables on this side. Do we replicate that? Do we put more stables on this side and have another pasture? We could. I might do that actually. That might not be the worst idea. Symmetry is not terrible. I wonder if we do the same thing but kind of opposite and have the opposite kind of slope. But I don't know. I think that's the next step, is that I need to figure out where from here, how do we get to there? You know, how do we finish off this build? So I'm going to get that going here. We'll see what we come back to, but I'm really enjoying this build so far, and I think it's looking pretty good. All right, I'll be back in a second. Now that the sun's going down, it gives us the perfect opportunity to take a look at the completed build. The interior is not quite done, but it's together enough that we can get a couple horses to start living in here in those stalls. And the outside is pretty much all done. There's a couple more things I want to do. Maybe get a couple details around, like some barrels. I was thinking about maybe building a wagon on the other side, or like a horse-drawn cart. And then obviously I want to fill in those beds on the top with some flowers or leaves or some kind of plant. But I think it's looking really good. I think we did a good job with this. I think the only thing left is to get some inhabitants here. Horsies, 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 horsies. I'm gonna go through all, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these horses, and we're gonna pick the best one. And we're gonna 7! All 7 of these horses, and I'm gonna figure out which one the best one is, and I'm gonna bring it home. Oh, oh. Okay, guys, we have successfully tamed up all the horses, and we seem to have ourselves a little party going on here too. And I found the best one here. He's not the greatest horse, but he's also not terrible for a wild horse. He goes 11.1 meters per second, and he's got a jump of about 3 blocks, so that's not too bad. As we're riding back home here, and we're not too far, I just want to thank you guys for all the support I'd gotten on my first 2 episodes. It's just so many nice comments. I'm going to pop up some of my favorite ones here on the screen as we ride back. Like, thank you so much. I did this really just as a challenge to myself and as more of a commitment to playing Minecraft rather than to, you know, building any sort of audience or following. But it seems like you guys enjoyed it. So I appreciate it. And if you guys want to stick with me and keep watching, you're more than welcome to. And, you know, like we did earlier, I will take suggestions from the comments. I'll read them all. I'll respond to as many as I can. And yeah, thank you guys. Okay, let me fix that real quick. I learned my lesson. Never be nice to your viewers or subscribers or anything. What do you get repaid with when you're nice to your subscribers? You get rewarded with being exploded. Nobody likes being exploded. Anyways, guys, we got it all fixed up. And like I was saying, thank you all so much for subscribing and for commenting and just for following me along this journey. I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say each and every time. And if you have any suggestions, like this semi-automatic wheat farm that we built here today, feel free to leave them down below, and I'll try to get to them best as I can. I think as far as today goes, I've done just about all the building I can manage. I think between episodes, I'll probably add in a couple more of these fields around here. I'm thinking one right in here, maybe for carrots, maybe a potato one right in here. And then I'll probably mark out where we'll do some hobbit holes, and I might start us off next episode with a little time lapse of me building some of those. But yeah, as far as today goes, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you. Bye! Bye!